with an update on its actions. The DOH is consulting with DLNR to update its application process. So we can't speak on behalf of DOH or the county, but this is for your information. Okay. And then this is the statement that we got from the county. Here for you to read, but I'll also read it off here. On June 27, 2023, the Kauai County Planning Department determined the improvements at 4400 Oneone Road to be repairs not subject to a special management area permit or a zoning permit. Subsequently, upon review our internal process, we found that the installation of a new septic system as a repair is in keeping with how the planning department historically reviewed septic systems upgrades for existing cesspools. While there may be environmental policy reasons as to why the department has taken this position over the past several years, it is clear that a septic system should in fact be considered development, and any new development does indeed require an associated SMA permit. Moving forward, all proposed septic systems are now required to apply for zoning permits, and when located within the SMA, an SMA permit will be required. By requiring an SMA permit prior to installation of a septic system and the corresponding routing to other government agencies, including but not limited to the State Historic Preservation Division, potential impacts such as the risk of inadvertent findings of EV Kūpuna can be addressed before ground disturbance. For the resolution of this site's current burial findings, we respectfully defer the requirements of the SHPD. Okay. So now I'm going to go through a timeline of events that have taken place after the last community meeting that we had. Mainly from the perspective of OHA, there's definitely been conversations that OHA has not been a party to. We do know that DOH has had conversations with SHPD, and we do know that the landowners' attorneys have had conversations with SHPD that OHA was not a party to, so we do not have information on those. But we are providing you with a timeline based on what OHA was provided with. Slide. Okay, so hold on. Sorry. Technical thing. So just to recap a bit from the last meeting, November 4th, we'll convene a meeting with DOH, SHPD, and the county. Held here, obviously. You know, during this meeting, DOH acknowledged that they did have inadequacies in their permit review process, and they committed to addressing this in collaboration with OHA and DLNR. So we had Dr. Fink here, who's the director for DOH. He made some statements that night. DLNR, we had Don Chang here. She reiterated the need for a more proactive process to help identify EV Kūpuna ahead of a project-related digging. And she assured attendees that there would be more consultation during this process. And then the planning director was also here, and he stressed the need to reevaluate the county permitting exemptions, which they've done, and to see if these type of septic system upgrades are still eligible for an exemption or not. And as you read in his statement, they're no longer exempted, so they would have to go through the county permitting process. So it's just another layer of review there. So since then, so on November 7th, as part of DOH's promise to reevaluate their process, they'd look to OHA and even DLNR on providing them examples from other agencies that they had helped them improve their process. And so via email on November 7th, you know, immediately after the meeting, soon after, we provided them with some examples from other state and county agencies throughout the state. And it's my understanding that they're still working on the process and still actively collaborating with DLNR on that. That was also in the statement that was shared earlier. Okay. So then following this, on November 12th, I think some of you have seen SHPD, they did issue a follow-up letter to their initial letters of determination with a specific set of actions that they had requested of the landowner before they were allowed to proceed with any further construction and even putting their system into operation. So SHPD, they wanted access to the site so they could find out the locations of the burials to make sure they were flagged and they were protected with orange fencing. They also wanted all of the backfill sifted with 1/8 inch mesh wire. This SHPD had requested this in a formal letter. So they also wanted a site plan map depicting where the burials were in relation to the system. And part of that was also to determine if any type of project redesign was warranted. The landowner was also instructed to upload all correspondences and emails related to the field work and any photographs to upload that into their HICRIS file for the project. The property owner was also supposed to ensure that there was adequate consultation has been conducted with DOH and OHA, and that all stakeholders regarding short and long-term preservation measures for the burial sites were taken into consideration because they were supposed to craft a burial treatment plan, a burial site component of a preservation plan, I should say. And the letter also reemphasized that, if necessary, again, depending on current conditions, that there may be a necessity to remove and relocate septic tanks 1 and 2. That was on the table at the time. And then on December 2nd, we do know that the sifting of the backfill work commenced. OHA did avail ourselves to participate as cultural monitors, but I think due to some conflicts with us being able to meet their timing window, I think they wanted us to be available within 24 hours. They had declined our offer to participate as cultural monitors. But what we do know is that on December 2nd, we were notified of 2 additional EV that were found during the sifting work on November 27th and 29th. And at the time, relocation on site was recommended. And then on December 3rd, after this all kind of like happens in the same time frame, we have another meeting with DOH, SHPD, and the county, and the landowner, and their attorneys, and the archaeological contractor, I believe it was Nancy, who was on that call. And at the time, it seemed like there was some confusion on the landowner's part on what a reinitiation of work meant in SHPD's November 12th letter, like what could they do versus what they couldn't do. And so SHPD, their administrator was there, and she had emphasized that, basically any type of work or activity would be considered a reinitiation of work, and that they wanted their conditions met in their November 12th letter before they moved on with anything. Then DOH also updated the group that they were revising their permit process, and they're still working on it now, from what I understand. Director Hall of the county was there, and at that time, he did advise that the county was no longer going to be exempting those types of projects from their permitting processes. And then again, as I put out here, OHA did offer to serve as cultural monitors for the remainder of the backfilling work. And then on December 9th, the landowner's attorneys, following that and the instructions from the November 12th letter, they submitted their draft site plan and project-related information, and all of this was uploaded into the SHPD online file, their HICRIS database. And then OHA was able to finally have access to this information because previously we did not know specifically where the burials were in relation to the septic improvements, and now we were able to see it in the draft site plan. The updates also did confirm with photographs that orange plastic fencing had been put around the burial areas, whereas before it wasn't included. Quickly after, on December 12th, SHPD issued a follow-up letter to the landowner. I guess there was still some uncertainty on what work could take place, and so they specifically specified that if there was ground if there's any dirt that needed to be removed for any further trenching work, that was eligible per SHPD's letter because that dirt would have had to been back sifted anyway. So, but they weren't supposed to do any connections, from what I understand. And they did also authorize them to repair a water leak that was near tank 1. Because I guess there was some confusion on whether or not they could proceed with work for that in light of the November 12th letter. And basically, SHPD gave them the okay to repair the water leak because it could have caused damage throughout the site, so it needed to be repaired. Then on December 17th, we did email SHPD requesting a copy of the draft site plan mentioned in SHPD's December 12th letter and any interim reports detailing the protective measures and access to the SHPD HICRIS files. So yes, although the landowner did upload it and OHA did have access to it, we actually had to ask again because although we thought we had access the first time, we did not. And so we got it after the second request. And SHPD replied saying that the HICRIS access has now been granted. And then SHPD clarified that the completion of the sifting work could happen unless trenching for the pipe connections were allowed, which is what I just explained earlier. And approval of the work was only for trenching, which is what I captured the first time. And then on January 8th, SHPD, they did issue a determination letter for the EV that were found on November 27th and 29th that I had mentioned from the sifting work. And the letter had indicated that they had consulted with the MOCU rep, Barbara Say, and they had agreed that the EV would be relocated on site. Without any, at the time though, it wasn't clear what the final disposition was going to be. We didn't learn about that until we got the draft burial site component of the preservation plan. Then January 15th, that should be 2025. Go back in time there. OHA, we did issue a letter to SHPD after we were able to look at all the HICRIS files, see the site plan maps. And basically, we were requesting that the project be redesigned because we didn't think that the project could provide adequate protections to the EV. Plus, I mean, in the SHPD's November 12th letter, the project redesign was on the table. So we were supporting that position because in our view of it, it looked like in some cases, particularly in tank 2, that some of the EV were within really close, like within 4 to 10 feet of the leach field for tank 2. And I have requested from the landowner's attorneys to verify those distances. We haven't gotten verification yet, but our look at the map is like it's really close, and there's no way that adequate protection could be provided, even if individuals think that this system may be indestructible, as was implied in the burial treatment plan. And so following that, we actually learned this from SHPD that on January 17th, DOH issues an approval for use, basically that they can put the system into operation. SHPD got word of this and they decided to do a site visit to the property after receiving this, because they got a notice from DOH as well that it was approved for use. We didn't get this. This is all stuff that we found out after the fact. In January 30th, after SHPD had gone out there, they issued a notice of alleged HRS 60 violation because they were not complying with the conditions of the November 12th letter. And they laid out the process of what would happen in the event of a violation. The matter would be taken before the Board of Land and Natural Resources. Could be potential civil fines up to $20,000 per day, although the BLNR would have discretion to set the monetary amount. Basically laying it out like what would happen if the landowner still failed to comply. I believe they gave them 30 days to comply. And then SHPD would go back out there and do another site inspection. So we're still in that window. And then soon after this, OHA, we are in receipt of the draft burial site component of the preservation plan. And then also on the same day, DOH rescinds the IWS approval. Again, I don't want to speak for SHPD and DOH, but it's my understanding they had a conversation. There may have been some confusion and DOH decided to rescind the permit. So in OHA's review of the preservation plan that was provided, we had provided a set of comments on February 14th. Took us about 2 weeks to get the comments in. And I'll just go over like what we had noted. We noticed there was some conflicting information regarding the ethnicity determination that didn't match the initial determinations that SHPD had formally stated in their determination letters. We didn't notice any clearly defined buffers. Yes, there were maps with EV in relation to the septic system, but there were no actual buffers and no actual measurements provided. Again, we called for a redesign of the project due to inadequate separation, which again goes back to our original letter that we wrote to SHPD and also calls back to what SHPD had initially called for on November 12th. We also noted that we thought there was limited detail in regards to the landscaping and the maintenance. There was no like maintenance intervals, like who would do these kinds of things. Although perhaps the rules are not as explicit, on other plans that OA has commented on, we have asked for these kind of things because it helps hold accountability, right? So if they're not doing something, how do we enforce it? And it's one thing if you say you're going to do landscaping, but it's like, when are you going to do this landscaping? Biannually, twice a month? So we asked for further specification on that. There was also no options for access to the burials that were at tanks 1 and 2, which is concerning for us. There was also no discussion on a possible burial good that was found near tank 1. We also noticed that there were inconsistent site descriptions. Now, although the rules don't necessarily call for site descriptions in this particular case, they went ahead and included them, but they were inconsistent. In our opinion, they were inconsistent. Some of them had stratigraphic profiles, while some of them did not. We also noted that in the discussion on previous archaeology, there was no discussion on what had happened at Alelea Road that was within about 0.3 to 0.5 miles away, where, my understanding, at least 30 burials were found. And also Native Hawaiians were arrested at that time trying to protect Iwi Kūpuna. So somewhat of a repeat incident would have been relevant information to share, I think. And perhaps even if that was included in the beginning with the checkbox for the initial permit with DOH, that might have triggered it going to SHPD sooner. So, I mean, in my experience, like on the federal level, half a mile is usually what you're going to look at the radius. So I don't know what they thought was in close proximity, but in my opinion, I probably would have included this. I mean, it's the same type of soil matrix, and now we're in the same situation. So something to think about. There's also a lot of uncertainty on who specifically was consulted for specific things, like who made the decisions regarding. There was photographs that were provided that looked like there was like a low rock wall that was like in the shape of a heart around the Iwi. We wanted to know who was consulted for that and whose decision was that. We also wanted to make sure that the Moku representatives were consulted with regards to the burial goods, like the possible burial good, like who made the decision to relocate it or not put it back with the Iwi, and also the decision for the Iwi that were found during the backfill, who made the decision to host it in the landowner's house and not return it to the Iwi that it possibly belonged with. Oh, I'm sorry. So we were asking for, explanations on what type of consultation occurred. There were Iwi that were found during the backfilling, November 27th and November 29th. And those Iwi, from what I understand, they were moved to the landowner's house, his residence. And so we wanted to know who was was that okay with the Moku representative? Was that okay with the cultural descendant that was being consulted? There's a consultation section within the burial treatment plan, but it's not very detailed. It's more of a summary of events that took place, but not very substantive. So it leaves a lot to be desired, in our opinion. There also seemed to be uncertainty on the minimum number of individuals. So originally, before the backfill Iwi that were found, it was believed that there were at least 8 individuals in the mix. And then there were 2 additional ones that were found. So it's a question of whether or not, okay, does that mean there was 10 minimum number of individuals, or is it, you guys believe that those Iwi that were found were part of another individual that was already preserved in place? And then if so, like, why were those Iwi separated from the individual? So we asked for clarity on that. And then as I previously explained, we had some questions about the consultation that had taken place. It didn't seem like there was specific consultation or some of the events that were provided, like they even listed the Waipaw meeting that we had as consultation. Yet not really describing the substance of the consultation that took place. You know, there was a lot of opinions that were expressed and it doesn't really highlight that. So those are questions that we had. And then numerous typos and figures that said that they were supposed to be included that weren't included. So these were OHA comments. We provided them to the History and Culture Branch Chief at SHPD that oversees the burial sites program. And SHPD provides their comments on February 21st. So I'll go through these. They're very specific in wanting to see that, you know, septic tank 2, they don't want it to be in operation anymore. They wanted the lines disconnected and capped. They wanted that certified by a certified plumber, and they're giving them 30 days to do this. They had also advised minimum buffers of 10 feet for the EV near tank 2, which is reasonable in some ways. It's far better than the 4 feet that some of the EV are currently at. And they also advised having a low dry stack wall or native vegetation. Again, I think they also don't know where the heart shape configuration came from. They did want updated maps with buffers. So, you know, similar things that OHA was asking for. They believe there should be a minimum 8-foot buffer for EV near tank 1. Again, with low dry stack wall or native vegetation. They also wanted the EV fragments that were found in the backfill to be relocated to where they were taken from. So we thought that was, they made the right call there. They did also call for additional description for all the sites and the burials because they too also noticed inconsistencies in the way that they were described. They did also ask for more specificity in terms of the landscape measures, particularly where the burials are and not necessarily anywhere else on the property. They're very specific in that they didn't want heavy machinery used for the landscaping. They also reiterated our comment that the possible burial goods should be included as part of the preservation plan discussion. Also that there should be a description about access for recognized descendants to tanks 1 and 2. There should also be annual compliance inspections and a 90-day window for recording the burial treatment plan with the Bureau of Conveyance. So in a lot of ways, I feel like they did take a lot of our comments, not 100% of our comments, but we were seeing the same things. So with that, we have another section of stuff, but before we go on to the next section, yeah, we wanted to turn it back over to you folks because that was a lot of information. So if you guys have questions on any of that information, we'll do our best to answer. Again, we can't speak on behalf of DOH or SHPD, but we'll try our best to answer your questions or redirect them, you know, as best we can.
Okay, so just a friendly reminder, since we have more faces, we all agree that each person who comes up to ask a question only has 2 minuke. In English, 2 minutes. Please allow the time once you've asked your question for a response to be given. And then we want to make sure that every person who has a burning question that they want to ask or clarifications, that each person gets to have their opportunity. If you want to ask another question, we're going to save that till we get through round 1, if that makes sense. Does it make sense? I'm going to remind everybody, please speak with aloha, ho'ihi. Even if you get excited, please tame the fire. Think of water. Be like water, my friends, okay? The time is over here. We will be over here monitoring the time. So please don't be hoo-hoo. If we tell you, kalamai, wahala e kava, your time is up. So just iike mako, okay? Can? Hikino? Okay. And on the other side of things, if you have additional questions that are not pertaining to 4400 One Road, please save those for another time. If anything, if it's something to support, we can collect those questions on the side. And we can acknowledge you in that way, but please, the questions that we're gonna be discussing at this point in time, we wanna focus solely on One Road. So if there's anything else, kindly reminders, we will save that for another time. If you can write your questions on that form that we have up front here, we can hold those questions on the side and make sure to include them when we do forward these questions for further consultation and clarification to those departments. Okay? Mahalo nui. So, round one. Nobody here first? You guys get first dibs over here in person. Oh, come back, Auntie. Hell am and then we'll go to Zoom. If there are no other individual questions here, we will go and float in between with the Zoom questions. So our Zoom ohana, we did not forget you. We will get to you after we address the kanaka who are out here. Mahalo.
Aloha.
Yeah, we gotta capture you.
Noela, Jocelyn. Can you hear? I have a question. Question is, we all know certain areas there are burial. It is known that in sand dune, there's. So I mean, going to our county and our developers and our realtors, is there a way that OHA can designate these areas as burial areas? Because we know our Kūpuna is buried in the sand dunes. We know Haena and Naue is all sand dunes. So why are we waiting for the county to determine or the Board of Health to determine if there's EVs there? Why can't we use ground penetrating radar or something to determine that these areas are in fact full of EV prior to them coming with the excavators and possibly asking these contractors and owners to use the shovel so that we're not having to sift through fragments of bones so that we can have them intact and give them, you know, like a proper burial or reinterment. I don't know, just my question. Where is OHA on this? And what is your position?
Yeah, so it's a good question. It's come up many times in the past. And so SHPD under HRS 60, you're supposed to be responsible for an inventory of burial sites throughout the state and other historic properties, but they've had issues with staffing and funding over the years and haven't necessarily been able to complete that task. But and they are aware that they are trying to develop a system or GIS layer for specific counties to designate these certain areas that are sensitive. I know some of the counties, like in city and county of Honolulu, anywhere that's in Jaka Sands is supposed to be flagged and automatically goes to SHPD for review. The counties have a level of autonomy amongst themselves, and not all of them subscribe to the same set of rules. But I think after this situation, I think hopefully the county of Kauai will think twice about that. OHA is certainly open to working with SHPD to help them fulfill their kuleana in regards to the burial inventory and developing a site in a GIS layer. And that's aside from that, there's also possible legislation. I know when Chair Chang was here, she emphasized more proactive methods, and there was some ideas to put forth legislation to just require AISs in anywhere that has sandy deposits. Unfortunately, that bill hasn't advanced this year, but that's also another way and another mechanism to look at, putting this into the law, make it a requirement.
Okay, we already know we have problems with DOA, SHPD. We've been trying to contact David Buckley with, all of these state entities. So my question is, are you on the state side or are you on the people Lahui side? We need to try to work together on this. And when we stop and we say, oh, we got to check with the county. Oh, we got to check with DLNR. We need to check with SHPD. All of those people are not from here. We're dealing with Po'e Haole, which is not bad. We all work together. But at the same time, you know, I mean, Kauai doesn't have a burial council. I mean, we never had it for 2 years. And, you know, I mean, it seems like permitting process for the county, I mean, it accelerated and everybody's getting these exempted permits. And I spoke to a couple council members and asked him, you know, what's going on? How come all these accelerated permits is happening in areas where there's burials? And he said, oh, the people just trying to comply with the law. So I think it's time that OHA take a stand and represent the Lahui because, you know, I mean, we all know, you know, that these are burial areas. So we need to kind of like do the CIA, the cultural impact for our kupunas. And I just like to thank you for whatever you guys have done because it's really important that we all work together. Anyway, that's it.
Hui aloha. I'm Auntie Louise. I'm who you're referring to as far as Evie that was in relation on Alealeo Road. It was more than 37 on one property. We had to keep track of the homes that are coming up. And until we heard that they found Evie, that's when we could act on it. But each property next to YMCA, I think it was 63 by the end total. You know, down the street, there's more. And then the landowner also has the right to re-enter where they want. So that means that we have to ask permission to go see our Kūpuna, which is usually denied. All these homes are vacation rental homes, second residence. And this septic changeover statewide is going to really, really impact on Kūpuna. Already my heart is hurting just listening to your statements because, yeah, that's what happened. Everything we did, everything we stood for, everything they said that they were going to check back with us wasn't done, but the owner still did what he had to do, and he has a vested interest. Vested interest is and can be a bag of cement. Gives them the right to desecrate on Kūpuna Iwi. Now with these septics, it's desecration and it's desecration by defecation, which a leach feels. The septic tanks were right next to, it wasn't 4 feet away. The walls wasn't 4 feet away. This is not the first time I've seen it. On Vecchia Road, we had to deal with it also. Because we say keep in place, that does not mean that it's okay. Oh, okay, you want to keep them in place? We put our septic tank in. Oh, guess what? We're going to do you a favor. We're going to lengthen the leach field, the leach line. Really? You guys tell them what they're supposed to, rules that they're supposed to comply by, answer you back. They don't, but the work is still going. And they're doing the work how they like. And I can't deal with this anymore. All you departments got to get together. You see what we see right there. How come Shipty don't see? How come the counties don't see? Maybe we gotta, and if you want to talk to me, I'm looking for somebody that can create it. Maybe we got to think of different ways on cesspool upgrading with this to septic to fit into the cesspool. Not we'll dig another hole. Because Naivio Naue Cemetery is from Keipuhi all the way to Makua. if you want to go one day or tomorrow even, we can walk from One. And I will stop at every place that Iwi Kūpuna was desecrated, moved for what? Swimming pool, septic tank. And they're put where they want to. Back in Naue, we requested reinternment. Not that we agree on it, but reinternment. If they're on the ocean, put them on the ocean side. We will come and make a ahu on it. If you're on a roadway, put it on the roadside. We will come and put an ahu on it. Because I want generations to know where their kupunas are. When I'm taking my mo'opuna for a walk, and oh, Tutu, look at every house has pohakus. What is that? Oh, that's all your kupunas. They dug them up so they can put their shitholes in it. But they left the other ones inside there. Still getting shed on too. So, you know, we only can do what we can do, but they're gonna do what they wanna do. You know, and I thank each and every one of you for standing up for Kūpuna Iwi. And thank you guys for coming and seeing what we see. But let's take it to the next step. I tired of people seeing what? I was 50 when I was at Naue. I'm gonna be 70 this year and it's still the same. So why don't we take it to the next step so this will not happen again? Anybody in that Kepuhi area, Tumakua, above ground, pump your shit out. If you're a resident, maybe, you know, that's your resident that you live in, maybe you can be exempt because you know what? We're not flushing as much. Everybody going work, kids are in school. Me and my husband, we're old style, no flush if it's yellow. You know? So think about it.
Mahalo, okay. Mahalo, okay.
Okay. So, mahalo for the modelo. Next question, and let's please stick to question only because we appreciate the modelo. Let's get as many questions as we can because there are a lot of people, individuals here in the room and also our ohana on Zoom that want to couple us here. And I want to acknowledge the things that were said. The issue at One is setting precedent. What that means is making an important agenda item, not just here locally on the island of Hawaii or in the county level, but also on our state and federal level. So I understand that in due process, we don't like what that time frame might look like here as Kanaka, but that due process is in play. Okay, we have people from Speaker Nakamura's office, who's the Speaker of the House, who is already very aware and very present when it comes to what is happening in our Kūpuna. So just know that OHA has been such a great ally to us. We've been working directly with them. And yes, like they mentioned in their slideshow, we are not all privy to the internal conversations that are happening between departments. Those conversations are happening that we know of, but we are trying to, again, put it, I shouldn't even take the mic, family. We are all on a community level as an initiative, in a organizational level, I like OHA, and even in our state community departments are trying to make it on their agenda as well, that this is an important item. So this meeting is indicative of the work and effort that we all put in to make this a priority. Stacy doesn't need to be sitting here as a director of her office, yet she brought her whole office with her. So just know that I want to acknowledge the hard work of our Kūpuna who are still with us, our treasurers, who have been doing this hard work for years, longer than I've been alive. What we're trying to say in this younger generation and at this time, we want you to know that your guys' hard effort is not being done for naught. And know that Keapoi is on our side. I've had this conversation. We cannot think like we're losing. We cannot think like we're not getting nowhere. This is happening because Kepua is omanaing it to us, that it's now. So let that reinvigorate our mana, our ola, and not think that the hard work that Auntie Louise and the hard work that Auntie Nani then put into this is for naught, because it is not for naught. Okay, and I want to acknowledge that. Okay, so mahalo. Okay. Next. I come to you. No, no, no. Yeah. No, no, no.
That's okay. Okay. Hi, Louise. Louise and I go back, way back, 11 years. Le'a Street. So let me share some things that I learned the past 11 years. And my concerns are burial treatment plans, landowners in the burial council, permitting of property without checking to see if get bones. And what is the proactive stuff that OHA has done since then? Anyways, burial treatment plans. The Brescia case, they had about, what, 6 or 7 plans, right? Maybe more. The guys could not make up their minds how to do a burial treatment plan. His name was Michael Dega. Yeah. I hear alo him many times. And I think that a burial treatment plan is not to be chosen by a developer or a government agency. I think it should be based on what the people know about the place to do a burial treatment plan. So another bugaboo about mine is buffer zones. They never made sense to me. The spirituality of the Kūpuna goes beyond buffers, goes way beyond the whole area where they're buried. It permeates the whole area. Get that straight in you guys' mind. This is a spiritual thing. So buffer zones, forget it. I think it's insulting to put buffer zones. And now, burial council. We're supposed to have a meeting February 19th. Canceled. I didn't get a memo about a cancellation. Did anybody? Oh, how's it? So I did go to the website and have clicked on memo. That's supposed to be the notification about the cancellation, and it wasn't there. I couldn't find it. But I got something to say about canceled burial council meetings. Track the quorum. We always have problems. Doesn't have to be because we found one burial. Get together with the burial council's quorum or not and have a meeting once a month, please. Okay? Quorum you need only if you're gonna make business and do and vote. If you're not, if you're just gonna talk about community issues and sharing some things about burials in the area, you don't need a quorum. So please, let's see that, okay? And the reason why I was against landowners, big landowners being on the burial council, that was because they were po'ehaole. And I don't think a po'ehaole can make any kind of decisions on naivi Kūpuna, please, no. However, if the big landowner is Kanaka, maybe we'll consider it. Okay, mahalo everybody, love you all.
Okay. Is there anybody? Oh, okay.
Aloha. Oh, my kako. Sherry Cummings. Aloha. And I'm just going to segue into Auntie Punani. And if this is about 4400 One, part of the problem is what Auntie said, the burial council. So I like you folks' help. And I'm going to ask for your kako because you can kako some individuals in the room of this very important issue. And I got a problem. And I like you kako me because I was hoping Shipti was here. Kauai. Okay, let's have the conversation about Kauai.
because we all had this pilikia, all of us, at one point in time, we went off on social media and talked about how they'd hijack one process for us in regards to our iwi kupuna. I'm going to talk about myself, and I'm going to put this on the record because it's going to go further than just this. I was appointed burial council, and I know some of you know that, under David Ige's administration. And when I was appointed, there was everybody who knew me, that Uncle Teddy Blake and Dana Huna, you were there also when you first got elected, and you had tried with Mauna Kea Trask, and I put that on social media, because when we wanted to revitalize the council, because of its inept, we asked for just what somebody else mentioned. Instead of turning this to inadvertent findings, because development happens and then they find, we wanted to have a council seriously go after Kuleana lands and register those EVs, so that when developments can happen, we're already solidified as those registered burials, where we didn't have to come into this pilikia about inadvertent. That was the problem. So when Dan became the OHA chairperson, and this was at Koloa, I remember very well, we said we was going after the council. And I put my name in. Kamealoha, you had, who else put their names in there? Uncle Teddy Blake put their name in. Palala became one that was coming up. And out of everybody, and they thought I was crazy because I said I wanted Ni'ihau. And they knew why I wanted Ni'ihau. And I went through the process, legislatively passed, Ige signed, I became burial council for Ni'ihau. Since the time of me being here in 2021, you guys can check the record to see when and how many times, and you can count on 2 fingers, the burial council being present to help regarding this kind of situations here. And in that time, there was only one recordation of minutes of the name Sherry Cummings being in the meeting when I'm not there. Because yes, I did put my name out there. I wrote a letter to Kauai to say I wanted to step down because I had a health situation and I wanted to get off the council. 2 times they met since my name was to reconsider, and no one ever did anything to take my name off through a process, a due process, to recognize my letter, to rescind my name, to get it through the commission with Shifty to get me out. No recordation of that. And so I am on the burial council. And the only time that they ever talked about me out of that 2 times, and look it up, and we found this out accidentally. And that was at a meeting of the burial council 2 months ago, when who was present was everybody in the room except Auntie Barbara Say, who could not attend. And who was in that room was Bruce Robinson. Why? Because in the minutes they said they were going to repurpose Sherry Cummings, Yokotake, get her out of where the governor said you are for Ni'ihau. They repurposed me right here to Halelea. And they brought Bruce Robinson back on. Okay, this is what's happening. And no one ever had any minutes because no meetings was done. So what everybody had problems with then was the truth. The IBC never did meet. Never did meet. The month after that, absolutely there was quorum. The only person that they were taking up was my nephew's wife, Rosalind Malama Cummings. That was the only agenda item besides what's her face, Kauai put on the agenda. Okay? You guys look around yourself and you guys ask yourself, and I went on there, the social media, to put it out there. of what is going on. And I had the conversation with Megan, because there's a lot of stuff that people don't even realize. And who's creating the dissension amongst us as people is the very people that say they're doing things to help revitalize this IBC. Where is she in the room? I am on the burial council, whether people like it or not. My tie to this place is very real. I brought in my blue bag there. And the only reason why I told Auntie Punani I did not take out the pala pala for Wainiha was because who came here was Mahaoi. You had Helani Sonore Pale and you had Uncle. And God bless them for the work that they do, but the kuleana of that place to save our Evie is us here. So I took my paper and I ran. I have everybody's everything that everybody looking for. And there's a reason why I had that. But I'm not going to sit in one room and everybody going to be wolves through a process that is ours. Because they all get one hidden agenda. And let me tell you what's happening is important here. Because this ties in to Koloa. Whether you guys believe it or not, this is, when you talk about precedents, this precedence here is what's happening in Koloa. And let's think about Koloa and who is Kauai o Koloa. Okay? So I ask the question for you folks, because it's not hard to back this up. Like the chairman told Kauai, the only thing that is on record is Sherry went through a legislation process and Sherry was signed by the governor to represent. You, the burden of proof is on Shipti. And you have Kea and everybody trying to say this. But Sherry's a little bit more wider than that. And Sherry know what they said. You know, so create this fairness for all and representation for what, believe it or not, we all like the same thing. Okay?
Anyone else? I think we're almost, are we sticking to the 6:15?
Okay, aloha, I'm Megan. I was wondering if there was any consultation with OHA regarding the burial preservation plan, as they said there was going to be. You can answer that later. The temporary orange protection net had been removed, and the property's been beautified. It's like it's erasing what's there, so we don't know where it is. I want a clarification because per the letter, it looks like one of the violations was that the leach field one was to be sifted, the entire project, and instead they filled it with gravel and piped it and then sifted the outside sand is where they found fragments that they said they wanted to re-intern to an ahu out on the easement. But I also wanted to know where the sand pile, the remaining sand pile is, because that also carries our EV Kūpuna. So to destroy it, run it in the driveway, like what happened to the surface? I also wanted to know if the Department of Health, you know, it says here that they gave approval for use on January 18th. We had reached out to them, letting them know what was happening on the project, and then to have them rescind what they said. Like, do the agencies not talk to each other? Does Shipti not, do they not defer to Shipti after all of this? You know, it seems like we're not the ones getting paid here, yet we keep having to be the ones doing the dirty work, getting arrested, looking like the bad guys. You know, so it would be really helpful if they didn't give approvals and then rescind because they were caught up in something. And in the meantime, yes, both septic tanks are being used. And we reported that back in November, that both tanks are being used. Both of them are being flushed into, and every cottage, 5 vacation rental cottages are being lived in full time right now. You know, where's the check and balance? So I appreciate OHA being out here. I know these questions are not directed to you, but if you be able to get them to the agencies. Let's see. And then will OHA follow up with SHPD regarding consultation with community and descendants of the specific location? Hello.
Mahalo nui ana ke Megan.
Do you want me to
Uh,
answer some of her questions? I can't answer all of
Yeah,
them.
now,
Uh,
yeah, he can help. Do it now.
So in terms of OHA being consulted, we were provided with a copy of the burial treatment plan to provide comments on, which I went over in one of the slides. I can pull it back up. There is a draft. So, yeah, we provided comments on February 14th, Valentine's Day. And we provided their comments, and I think SHPD took a lot of our comments, not 100% of our comments, and incorporated it into their own comment letter that came about a week after. So yeah, to answer your question about the consultation, this is the extent of the consultation between OHA. We thought that it would be more interactive because we have been very forward with both SHPD and the landowner that we wanted to participate in the process. And we weren't provided with the treatment plan, I think, until the end of January, because we provided comments in about 2 weeks. In terms of what happened between DOH and SHPD, like, we didn't know the specific dates of like when the approval for use came and then when the rescindment came. We recently found that out from SHPD because we weren't a party to this conversation. So we can't answer what specifically took place, but we think that there was some level of confusion on DOH's part. And I think, yes, definitely in this particular case, they probably should have deferred more to DLNR before issuing a notice to proceed or approval for use. But again, I can't speak for DOH or SHPD, and I don't know exactly why certain decisions were made. But that's the extent of what I can answer right now. Yes, it was, yes, it's a draft. It was prepared by Exploration Associates Limited. It's my understanding that it was Ms. McMahon who's sitting in the back. No, they were hired by the landowner.
And then we'll round back to,
Aloha, my name is Paula. I live on that side. I live in that Aupua. I know that we don't know who is buried there, but I know my Kūpuna know who is that in there. My family is wondering, how can you guys help us to keep our iwi Kūpuna in place where they've been buried by their people? Whether they're Japanese, Filipino, Chinese, Hawaiian. I know my Kūpuna knew them because it's not a big Ahupuai. It's very small, very small. And there's only so much people that can live there. Now for the vacation rental people, how can they be accountable for what is going on? Because this has been going on for years, before even I was born. This has been going on. How can they be responsible for their actions? Like for One One, that place is functioning right now at this moment. People is renting there. It's been renting there from last year. It's been renting. And the iwi Kūpuna is right next to the shithole. Right next to it. It's not 4 feet. It's right next to it. So my ohana wants to know, how can you guys make this pono, not for us, but for our iwi? That they come first. We come second. How can we keep them in place? How can we stop everybody from digging them out and then putting them in the corner? And that's what had happened. I don't know if they had put the iwi Kūpuna on the beach access trail. What a place to be, where everybody can be walking all over them. That is Heva. But my family, because I represent them, all of them that lives there. We want to know how can we do it better. We have to excel. We've been already here. We need to move up further where we all can have clarity and feel good from the inside out. If not, you can get mai. You can get sick. Something going to happen not to you, but maybe to your children or your children's children. So I want to be positive in this whole thing. And I'm so happy that Oahu came, mahalo tita, bringing the crew in to enlighten us. Enlighten us. We need to be enlightened because we're all in this, this no good place. Everybody wants to choke everybody. Everybody wants to pull their hair out. Everybody wants to, but we cannot. If you do that, then you're just as bad as them. You know? So I wanna, my family, my friends all over here, we all know each other. Let's take it up to the next level. Let's help them so they can help us. Okay? And be positive in all the things we say and the things that we do. Because we ain't gonna live forever. You're not gonna live forever, no ways. Okay? So we have to do it not for us, but for our next generation. And that's my next generation right out there, the twins. I depend on them to carry on the legacy of our tutus for the North Shore, for Halilea, Napali, the West Side, right around this island, and to the Pai'aina. So let's be positive. We know the negative is always there, definitely. But how can we conquer her? We need to conquer her with aloha and love. That is the most strongest thing of all. Okay? Mahalo.
No.
Ikino, Ninao. Hi, aloha. I have a question for Oha. Okay, so Oha does not have regulatory oversight or powers over this issue, but I think at some point, I think it would be, I think that's what you folks want. You want some level of regulatory, is that what one of the, I don't know, one of the goals, but what exactly is your kuleana to all of this? Because it's a little bit unclear to me. Because when I originally came to the meeting a few months ago, we were under the impression that Oha was here, because it's happened in the past where we've had these iwi kupuna issues, where Oha has assisted Shifty to register people. So I came here at the last meeting with the understanding that we're gonna get everybody through that process. And I was a bit disappointed when that didn't happen. And since then, I'm still a little bit confused as to exactly what is your role in all of this. And if you could clarify, if you don't have a regulatory role, um, what is the process that you folks have? Um, do, are you folks working with Shifty to make sure that you folks get that list of people who applied or in the process of or have already been determined to be cultural and lineal descendants of the area? In my opinion, I think that had that list and that clarification of process been a little bit more clear, I'm thinking that that would have been helpful. And perhaps some of the confusion that's happening now as to who is and who isn't and all this other kind of stuff, it just might have made it easier. And in terms of consultation, so the question is, do you folks have the ability to pull together everybody and, consult, you know what I'm saying? And then represent us at Shifty and stuff like that? Or, because the way it is now, it's kind of all hema, right? Right? I think so. Because some of us are going straight to Shifty, some of us are going other places, and it's just like all over the place. And I just think a clear process and what your expectations are would be so helpful. So we can go to you folks with appropriate questions. Because, I've emailed a lot and I've asked a lot of questions. And I'm not saying that it's anybody's fault that they didn't answer questions, but I did ask and very early on in the process. So mahalo. Sorry. So sorry that was so convoluted.
No, not the word convoluted. We're gonna scratch that one.
Okay, I can answer. some
Someone
of
gonna
the
go ahead.
questions.
Mahalo. Mahalo.
No confusion, who belongs there. Is that rather be lineal or cultural The family, you is one of them too.
Malie.
A good question asked, so let that question get answered. Let Oha answer, and then in regards to what this is for a later time, we can have that outside conversation, okay? Let us be with Aloha and Bipono. So Oha, can you guys please answer the question that Carmelo has mentioned, please?
All right, there were several questions. You asked, what is OA's role in all of this? And as I split, maybe if you don't recall, but in the last meeting, I did explain our statutory and constitutional mandate. If you look at 10-3, one of our purposes and our missions is to assess the policies and practices and procedures of other agencies that are impacting on Native Hawaiians. So that's what we've been doing throughout this process. We've been reviewing what SHPD has been doing. We've been reviewing what the Department of Health has been doing and trying to make sure that they're following their rules and their statutes. We make recommendations to them. We went as far as to convene that meeting. We called and have it directly engaged each of these agencies. And that's our role in the process.
Ipuleo.
Registered with Shifty, right? Which is what we did. So what does that mean? So once you register with Shifty, does that mean, because you said that we're supposed to always, are you obligated to consult with us before you make the recommendations, or you guys just, because the whole issue of mandatory, fine, it's okay to say that it's mandatory, but it still doesn't answer the question as to what do we consult with you? Do you consult with us, or is it just a waste of time for us to go to contact you? Because to me, the whole system doesn't make a lot of sense. And I'm confused as to what we can talk to you folks about and what we're supposed to be talking with Shifty about. Because
Yeah,
it's
you can engage OHA directly at any time. I've called
Right.
you several times. Have I
But
not?
you still haven't answered my question. That's what the issue is.
Well, going to the question of cultural descendancy, that's SHPD's kuleana under the statutes and the rules. And so we want to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to. And if they don't listen to us, sometimes that happens. We make advisory comments. We don't have enforcement authority over what another agency does.
Okay, so I know time is halaeni, so do we want to move into the second part already? Walavana Nino. Should you have any Nino that you would like to be answered, please write it on that, Kalamai, write it on the form that's located here on this table, and we will send those Nino to whoever it's addressed to and do a follow-up, and we can do that. And mahalo kako, and please refer to the statutes, HRS Chapter 6E, and read those thoroughly. If you need further consultation, make sure that you guys are looking at what that language is, because therein lies clarification, okay? Mahalo kako.
All right, we're gonna move to the next section, and I think some of this will be able to help answer what some of you folks were talking about and what OHA is doing, what we're attempting to do in all of this. So if you look at legislation that's being put forward, OHA did put forth a bill, SB 268, related to the Island Burial Council's companion bill, HB 409. It would remove the landowner seat from the Island Burial Councils, and it would reduce the quorum from 9 to 7. So we've put this bill forth. It's gone through a couple of hearings already through Hawaiian and Judiciary. It's had overwhelming support. Yes, there's been some opposition, but this bill was largely put forth out of feedback that we've gotten from the various community events that we've been out to. Even here, some of the suggestions were made. And so we took this before the legislature, and if you guys support this legislation, if it's something that you believe, you guys can also support it with your testimony. Yeah, sure. But even so, yes, there has been good members that have had sat on the council on behalf of the landowner, and they can apply without the landowner if they want to. They don't have to have a landowner seat.
Anake. One for Moku Anake, and but we will be reserving the questions and comments till after the report out, right?
Yeah.
Mahalo. Kamakana, you can take us back.
Yeah.
To the last slide.
Yeah, so this is the EV bill that's put forth. As I said, it passed Hawaiian and Judiciary as of February 19th. So you can pull those bills up on the legislature site. But OHA has also been doing action alerts about it and trying to assist people with providing testimony, if you feel inclined to do so.
Hold on, Kamakana. We go back to that. And then I just wanted to share a little bit, the position that OHA has taken when it comes to this legislation. It's simply because we believe, that in our pursuit of air, that no one who is not Kanaka should have autonomy or speak for the iwi Kūpuna. So that is in the most simplest form, why this legislation was proposed by OHA. And absolutely, Anake. So like the Mohoi have shared earlier, all the years, all the mana, all the sweat that you've invested, it's coming to fruition today. And we want to acknowledge you and mahalo you for the opportunity to serve with you. Kako, kako. So again, it is simply because the administration and our trustees have taken the position that Kanaka should have autonomy and final say over our iwi Kūpuna.
No. Okay. You cannot prove it either. That's the first thing we ask. Where's your file?
That's a great question you asked. Mahalo for the conversation.
That's not all countries. So unless you go autonomous or you go into a different situation where take all of our portfolio, millions of dollars and billions of dollars, move it to someplace else, but don't be under the state government, please. Thank you. Can I make myself clear? Thank you.
Okay. Wala ba ho mau?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, other bills that you folks might be interested in, not stuff that's put forth by OHA, but things that we are trying to support and get behind SHPD to get them the resources they need to do the job that they need to do. SB 18, it's proposing to appropriate an undisclosed amount of state funds so the DLNR can inventory historic properties and burial sites and collect data on burial site locations. Ties back to what's in statute of what they're supposed to be doing. And we feel that indeed this will help SHPD to do a better job if we can help them to get the resources that they need. And we believe that this can be a more proactive approach to getting sites identified before the bulldozers come out. That's what this is about. So if anybody is inclined to want to also support this measure, you can. There's also SB 1266. It's trying to establish an interagency program to basically under SHPD, and OHA would be a part of this program, and we'd also work with OCCL to deal with issues regarding coastal erosion and the EV that are coming out, and to figure out where we can reinter them and if there's a better process that could be employed. It wouldn't produce immediate results because it's an interdivision program that would look at the feasibility of doing all of this, but we feel like this is a great thing to do. OHA wants to be a part of it. And if anybody else wants to support this measure as well, we believe this is another step towards being proactive towards addressing this issue of EV that are eroding out. No, it's a fair question. So OCCL, it's the Office of Conservation and Coastal Lands that oversee the coastal areas. They're also under DLNR. Department of Land and Natural Resources. State. They're supposed to be working for the people. Isn't that a concept, huh? It's the. Yes, you can still testify. I think they passed 2 hearings each, and so there's going to be a 3rd hearing. It would have to pass 3 hearings on the Senate, 3 hearings on the House side. There could be a special conference if there's any disagreements between what's in the Senate and the House, but yes, there's still opportunities to testify. Still has a long way to go.
Ipuleo.
So I started working for the state in 1988. I got relocated to Kauai in 1994 after Hurricane Iniki, when we had a lot of EV washing up all over the shoreline, and the Burial Council was very helpful in recommending that I get relocated to Kauai to be here to respond to those duties. At one time, the office had 35 staff. When it first became a division, it was with initially a site section within the state parks office. And I was there when that happened. We became a division and had 35 staff. It has never had 35 staff since that beginning part. Part of it is it has a lot of responsibilities. It tries to review almost every permit that a county or state agency gives out, but that they fall short of doing that, as you know. And even then, when they get permits, they don't have enough staff to review them in a timely manner. Even though their statutes and the rules of the HAR say you have 30 to 45 days to review projects, the county agency here, like on Kauai, gives a 2-week turnaround. Maui is a very good example. So I worked my way up from being the Kauai archaeologist to the deputy SHPO and the deputy administrator for the State Historic Preservation Division. I worked for DLNR for 23 years into that capacity, so I can tell you, yeah, helping fund the office would be a good idea. Half of their budget comes from the federal funding from the National Park Service. They have a biennium budget, so they get that same amount of money. Most of it funds staffing as best it can. It used to be a very low paid position. They've tried to increase salaries for staff, but then it falls short of having money to fix the car, having money to fix the Xerox machine, sending out mail. When I moved up to be the administrator, just to tell you how bad the office was, they had to get me a P card or purchase card of like $50,000 credit limit to pay all the back bills that Shifty had when I stepped up to help catch up where they were falling short of. So for operation costs, they don't really have that. That makes their job sort of difficult. Kauai does not have an office. Even when I came here, I worked out of my house. They now work out of the DOT office area. So that's just some of the shortfallings that Shifty has. That kind of puts the situation so you understand it. It would help to have more money to them and help, and their role is to really to inventory the state of Hawaii, and not just this county, but every island. That was what they were formed to do, and help identify sites. And they should be, in my opinion, it'd be great if they could be independent. They don't have to be hired by a landowner, that they would be the staff would have that. We used to have DHHL had a staff of archaeologists that we hired, and they actually surveyed the Department of Hawaiian Homeland's lands. So that way it's sort of independent. They're making it, trying to do the inventory and do it right. So that would be the better process and a fairer process. Right now, what happens is they became a compliance agency. So they review it through permitting processes, and they attach conditions onto permits for people to do either inventory surveys or archaeological monitoring plans or preservation plans. So reality wise, it would be better to have a state employee or someone with that capacity under the state's jurisdiction versus a private landowner. Because when you do surveys for landowners and you show them all these sites they have, well, they've got to now figure out a map to figure out where they're going to save sites, or which ones can we data recover this, or can we save it? Those kind of issues where normally you would just go out there and do a survey and try to save those. So yes, the bills would help to do a better job, to give them more people and give them offices, get them all those things that they need to do a better job. So years ago, there was a project that the Mahuiki family was involved in here, that LaFrance was involved. And we brought a bunch of sand to that property, on the Robinson property. And we showed you guys how to screen, right? And I've done this with Megan. I've done this with Rosalind. I've done this with Kona to help you guys help us out. So you're helping us be responsible too. And then we go through that to do a screening. Years ago, when LaFrance was the first chair of the Island Burial Councils, we went to Alulike to try to get like that cultural monitoring program started. And we got hit with dead ends about that, because I did want to train more Hawaiians to be out here, or just cultural community people in general. Well, so I'm not in Shifty anymore, right? I'm a private person. So I don't have that role. Yeah. Right. And and my side on the county level, I have tried to get the county to help, because that's when the county stepped in here, because I thought it was a good idea when we were talking about screening at the time and sifting that sand. Yeah.
And I think you can share with us that will help us move on forward in our data. Not getting a implementation. Get certified from the state, or you have a PhD. No, none of that, because it doesn't work. Whether you have PhD or what,
Hold on. If I can just please ask if you can ask the question in the mic. And then we only have just a few more slides before we get to the Q&A and, concerns conversation part. However, before we move away from this, I just want to take 20 more seconds so the question can be asked in the mic. That way we can record it.
Yes, please. So the question is, are you willing to share, and what is that word you said? Volunteer your services for us? And not only for us, but for the Pai'aina. Okay. Right.
So
Explain.
mahalo. We have the
Okay.
question and let's
Yeah.
re-ask it again in the Q&A. And then that way we can both have microphones and then it can be
Right.
recorded, as well as those who are attending on Zoom, so they can also participate in the conversation. But mahalo nui for the question and the conversation. Holomoa.
So, wanted to go over, we've also been working on Island Burial Council recruitment because we know a lot of them haven't been meeting due to quorum issues. And so we had a solicitation that went out in October 2nd, 2024. We had a total of 28 candidates that came in. Majority of them from Hawaii Island, Oahu, and Maui. We only had one applicant from Kauai Island. Okay. We selected the top 15, preferably 5 from each island. The reason why there's 4 there is because some people had withdrawn. There, as I said, there was one person from Kauai, and that person made it through our selection process. Our BAE, which is our Beneficiary Advocacy and Empowerment Committee, approved it on January 8th, and then the full Board of Trustees for OHA approved it on January 23rd. OHA then submitted this letter of nominees to the governor on January 28th. And on February 14th, the governor's office made appointments to the Senate, which included 10 of OHA's nominees. Under the current law, the governor is only obligated to pick 2 per council, but they picked a good amount from our list. And the next step will be Senate confirmation for these individuals. And then they'll be ready to serve. And then we'll start up recruitment again later this year, because we've already had other people ask if they wanted to be part of the process. And so probably start it up maybe June or July again. That's correct. DLNR also you can also apply through DLNR. You don't have to apply through OHA. You can apply through both actually if you want to and give yourself better chances. But yes, Casey's correct. And then the final thing we'd like to share is that OHA has opened up a job opportunity for a compliance advocate specifically for Kauai. It means they'd be doing similar work to what I've been doing. I work in the compliance department. We're assessing the policies and practices of other agencies. So a lot of permit reviews that come in. A majority of it has to do with historic preservation. And so they'd be assisting to make sure that SHPD and the counties are following processes that they're supposed to. And they'd be making recommendations to those agencies.
This is big for OHA here. Trustee Ahuna is so tuned in to this island and his kuleana to you folks. And we get calls, emails, visits to, to each of us. And his call, his kahea to us on the administration side is, we need boots on the ground in Kauai. There's a lot of stuff that's going on in Kauai that needs attention. And we recognize that we cannot always do it from Oahu. It's not feasible to fly folks over. We need somebody who is pili to this place, who is kama'aina to this place, who understands, the issues of Kauai. So I just want to mahalo Trustee Ahuna for his continued dedication and commitment to Kauai. And, when this position became open, it was for Oahu. And we said, no, we're going to repurpose it and we're going to send it to Kauai because there's a lot of work to be done. So when you say, what is OHA doing for us? This is what OHA is doing. We're putting the attention here on the island to work alongside with our trustee, with our administration, to make sure that we have real time, all the time, attention to this island. So mahalo.
That's actually the end of the slides. But yeah, if there's any further questions, take them.
I want to say it in the mic. Anybody have a question who hasn't asked a question that would like to ask it now? Anybody? Thinking time. Okay, I'm going to ask a question from our Zumalani Ohana real quick. I will come back to our Ohana here. So there were some questions that came from some of our Ohana on the Zumalani. And I wanted to ask first, even though for some of us, we probably know this information, those of us who have been in their communication, the first question was in regards to communication. So what communication has OHA done or given to the community here? I would like you guys to answer so that everybody can hear it. I know some of that Kūkā has already begun, but can you please answer that question so that everybody can hear the answer?
OHA has received numerous emails and phone calls regarding this particular situation. We've come out here for a site visit. We've convened a panel last November, trying to hold DOH, SHPD, and the county accountable, bringing these agencies together to see how we can work to improve the process. And our doors have continuously been open to receive comments from individuals throughout the process.
Ho? No.
Oh, my
Ho. Yeah, no. What was the question?
So the question, are we talking about the same question?
same
Okay, the same one. Okay, just checking. So the question was, what has OHA done to communicate to us, the community?
Okay, mahalo. And I just want to add on to what Kamakana shared. From the last meeting on November 4th, our kapohana and some of the leadership, we've given out our personal phone numbers, and members from the community have reached out and we've been trying our very best to respond. Like has been mentioned in the earlier portion of our agenda, we haven't always been privy to every conversation pertaining to 4400 One Road. So what we could share out, we did in a timely manner. And there's always room for improvement. Like in the pule that opened this halavai, the only perfect one is our Kuamana, Yasu, and so again, we're learning, we're improving, we're pivoting, and we're trying our best. And I just want to say, as Kanaka, my door is always open. So if at the end of this halavai, you guys want to hold all this conversation and pilina, I'm always open to build that with you folks. Yeah.
I want to make sure that we don't forget our ohana on Zumalani. So I'm going to go back to community and I'm going to try and jump in between while I'm walking towards someone who has a question. Quick question was, can we, or whoever is interested, get a copy of the slides? Question in the front. Can we get a copy to the slides?
Yeah. Higino. Yes, so to Panedanina, Kalamayanti too. So to
Okay.
Panedanina, we will make a link available to the slide that was presented this evening on our website.
Okay, my burning question is, all night I've been trying to find out what happened to the bones that were desecrated on One Street? Where is it? And do we have a process here or a group of people maybe we can form to properly take care of Kūpuna, Iwi when they get desecrated? That question has never been resolved for me. Do you know?
Mahalo, Anake. And then T, if you can repeat the question.
Hmm?
Yeah,
So-
reiterate the question.
Okay, so the question from Auntie was, is there some sort of entity or what is the process for us when in regards to our situation at One, where when Evie is found, to malama the Evie as soon as it is found, besides leaving it up to what has happened where hands that shouldn't be touching those Evie are touching it or moving it, that is the Nino.
And then there was also another question too.
The other part of the question Auntie's asking is where are the EV that have been moved? And so that we can take care of it properly as Kanaka. That was her other part of her question.
So if you guys encounter Evie, what you're supposed to do is call the police and the State Historic Preservation Division. Don't move them. If you feel inclined to cover them, I've seen archaeologists do that due to cultural sensitivities. But yes, you're supposed to call the police and SHPD. Mainly that's because we don't know if it could be a crime scene and we need SHPD to determine if the remains are over 50 years old or not. If they're over 50 years old, then they're under the jurisdiction of SHPD. In regards to what happened to the EV at One Road, as I shared earlier, a majority of them, almost all of them, were preserved in place. There are only two fragments that were found within the fill that were relocated temporarily, well, in the documents that I saw, into the landowner's residence. I don't know where they are now, but SHPD is directing them to put those EV back with the rest of the EV. Yes, that's why we're calling for a redesign. Yes, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I will say that in recent years, we have stepped in for when county or any other disturbances like One, and we have come in as outsiders, removed from burial council and malama those EV. We have learned to make the adornments for them, wrapping them in kapa and then hala and wrapping and preserving and doing ceremonies. So we have done that next to YMCA. We've done it in multiple locations on Vecchi Road. And I think that's removed from what Burial Council did because they were absent in much of that. And so, yes, that's also our concern is these two fragments that are sitting maybe in the owner's house that we don't trust the Burial Council to come in and do what they do, but we would like to be part of that as we reintern them with the Iwi Kūpuna. And we have been involved since June. So we didn't just hop on for a couple days here and there or step in and out. This is goes with us day in and day out. We think about these Iwi Kūpuna and what has happened. And so, yeah, we would like to malama those fragments if possible, if there's a way. But I don't know if there's legally, but we are Nahala o Naue, and we would like to be that group that malamas them. Mahalo.
Oh, drop the mic. Mahalo, Megan. Before we move on to the next question, I just wanted to open the floor, an opportunity for Nancy if you wanted to share anything about the two fragments, or if you can walk us through the process of what happened to the loose sand, the dirt piles, and the status of where we are today. Mahalo, Nancy.
Sure. Quickly, so by the direction of Shipty back in September, end of the month, Shipty had directed us when we found additional remains. And so first tank has 2 burials. The tank was redesigned to be away from the burials. Nothing found in the leach field. Then tank 2, we started working on that. We had one at a depth of 5.5, 6 feet, 5.5. It's quite a distance. We were at the top of the skull. Megan was involved with Tomasi, who was my archaeologist out there. This happened in June. We waited to have meetings with the owner. That didn't happen until August, I believe. And the redesigns of the tanks all have to happen because the engineer has to redesign things. And we kept shifting the tanks. The leach fields were set. Then there was a collapse that happened, this was sometime in September. And the wall fell down on top of the burial that was in the tank too. And there was more fragments that got exposed. And then there was an additional burial that got found at the top near where the outflow to the leach field comes from the tank. And so anyway, the tank was still readjusted again. Shipty came out and made a decision to put plywood in. And then the tanks technically get filled with water, and then they get leveled, and then they were cemented. So the EV is behind the plywood. Before that happened, before they did all that, they actually covered the EV up per direction of Shipty when they made a determination to preserve in place. There was some fragments found in the leach field of tank 2, like 4, and they were also reinterred with the other EV, and I did wrap them in tapa and the hahala baskets. One other skull showed up, and I put a basket over its head, and then they were covered up when they were resetting the tank in that position. So then we were directed to, by the time the meeting in November happened, most everything except for the leach field for tank 1 was already done. The piping was already in there, and they had ground cloth, I believe. So when everybody came out to the job site, OHA and Shipty, those tanks were already covered and the barrels protected, and the tanks were already in place at that point in time. There was a huge sand pile that came from both the tanks and the leach field, and they were screened. That's the remnants that were screened through with a lot of animal bones. We had this EV that were found, and we had a minimum of 2 individuals found with that. They have to be housed by the owner, and that's what part of the burial treatment plan was, to propose where we were going to put those. And that was part of the discussion. We had several options. One was in the pathway recreational access. The other was out on the Napaka on the edge of the property. We left both open for discussions with that. In the meantime, and looking through the records, I was also able to find some of the cultural descendants through the Wainiha Hui that happened, and the lot owners who were named in those. Besides Milton Ching being recognized and also works as an archaeologist, he was a cultural descendant for the Halalea area. Then Kamialoha happened to have his family's lot is fairly close by. He was also asked to be a cultural monitor, so he worked as a cultural monitor on our screening process and what was happening next. So he was out there every day that we were asked to come out. And then my further record found a Trask family member that's also in a lot not too far away. So Mauna Kea Trask is also one of the cultural descendants. They were all given the plan, the draft plan, to review and look over and give their comments and feedbacks, as well as we sent the draft to OHA. So that was part of the consultation, and I agree with OHA's comments about that. We thought there'd be more dialogue going back and forth between us all on where we were at and before we finished that burial treatment plan. So that was usually the process that happens. So that's, if that helps everybody to, any questions?
Since you brought up Mauna Kea Trask, And I was gonna try to stay away from, but we have a real problem at Wailua Nui Ahuano. And there has been no record of what is going on there with Mahuna Pu'uone. And, you know, it's to the point right now where people are thinking that Uncle Valako and you know, the reinternment of the giants is fake. And, you know, I believe Uncle Valako. But, you know, I mean, I'm hearing through the grapevine, oh, it's not there anymore. And I remember back in early 2000, they did archaeological trenching all throughout Cocoa Ponds. So what happened to all the EVs and all of that information that was there that is now no longer available?
Mahalo for the question. And because the rules were set in the very beginning that we want to keep this focus to 4400 Oneone Road, you know, if Nancy would be open to field that question offline, you know, and I just wanted to just mahalo for the question because it's all relative. You know, it's all relative, and then especially, yeah, and then especially understanding how small the Kauai community is, and how even smaller the Kauai community is for those that have been stakeholders in all the conversations around Iwi Kūpuna. Yeah, so I mahalo the question, and if Nancy again would be open to field that question offline after. Nancy, hold on. If you could just finish that sentence on the record.
So no problem. I can ask your question. I can walk outside right after this and go ahead and answer it for you. But I forgot to bring in the fact that Sherry Cummings is also related to Milton, and she is also one of the cultural descendants. So she too was given the plan to look at and give comments to, and who she felt in her family might want to give us comments.
Mahalo nui for that. And as has been stated multiple times tonight, yeah, he ohana kakoa pau, makia aina aloha. Yeah, so if we can expand those conversations, you know, to also include, you know, recognize Kanaka, direct linear descendants of Kūpuna that originally from this wahi. So mahalo nui.
I just want to touch on one thing that I think is super important. So I've been hearing a lot of comments throughout this meeting, and one thing that I find very distracting is if Kanaka who are speaking are not the Kanaka that should be speaking on things that do not pertain to them. And if it does pertain to you, but the community that is here that has been here from day one pertaining to One Road, they should have the floor. And any distractions to this conversation which keep happening, and hui kalamai, I do not feel comfortable just cutting people off, and this is in a very specific environment, but I'm gonna go to that point. We as Ohana, I am a descendant of this wahi. My tutu papa's lot is located near to where this is all happening. Those people who have been dug up and desecrated on that property are our Ohana. So when we speak, I just kindly ask that we speak with respect to the people, like Kuike just said, who have been here and are the Ohana of this wahi. Because to not awamo your kuleana where you are from and where you reside and where you've been brought up and where your kupuna are buried and where your kupuna are from is going to become distracting. You cannot do everything. So I just kindly ask that we respect the ohana that are from this wahi. And when they speak, that you just kindly listen to them, even if you disagree. Because you can agree to disagree. But give them this opportunity to speak on what is important to them. That's all I ask. So, well, mawana ka kūkā na, we're gonna
Yeah,
continue.
we still have several minutes to field more questions.
Okay. And to Louise had a question. Okay, pull up your kalapona. I'm making your stage. It was a very good question in regards to one of the bills where the language is speaking about iwi that are found near a shoreline. to relocate those EV upland. And I think it was at the bottom HB bill.
Yep.
SB 1266,
666.
yes, the last section, where it talks about where identify EV located within low-lying areas affected just like Naue, coastal erosion, take appropriate steps to move and relocate EV from impacted burial sites to areas further inland. So maybe a little bit more clarification on that. We have our own interpretation. I had my own interpretation, but maybe just clarifying a little bit more context on that specific language for Auntie.
Yeah, because in our culture, especially in Naue, they were buried there for a reason. Because when the ocean comes, they end up going out to Po. Kaiaulu Kaunohi. That's the entrance to Po at Naue. From Keipuhi to Makua, that's the cemetery. That is not helping. That's why I asked Nancy if it's going to benefit the protection of Kūpuna iwi. But right there on the bottom, it states that any bones found on properties that are there, that are getting eroded, are going to get moved to the mountain. Where in the mountain? That's not part of our culture. These rules are not for our culture. I'm sorry, I'm speaking for the Kūpuna in the ground. Because you know what? I live in Naue. And I've seen every property. Ask Nancy, she knows all the numbers. She was working for the state back then when we were in Naue. And she was part of the desecrators. So, watch who you're talking to. And all of you, listen, this is from our hearts. Because they wake me up. They talk to me. They ask me these questions that I'm relaying to you guys. So sometimes I just get Kūpuna. Go visit them. There's the faces. And go visit them and go ask them. But that last one is not happening. It's not happening. It's not going to happen in Naue. Sorry. They already was desecrated and moved.
Mahalo. Mahalo, Anna Ken, if I can just clarify the language in this legislation. Yeah. What the administrator has recognized, and our administration here at OHA has recognized, is all throughout the Pai'aina, because sea level rise and erosion, yeah, our kupuna are washing out. So while I can respect that, and I will respect that, Anake, yeah, that's almost by design. What I want to recognize is today's generation of humans. They don't respect the kapu of old. So when our kupuna are washed out, what they do? Take them home. Sell them to museums. This is a historical fact. So how do we protect our kupuna from being exploited, from being further desecrated? So the language and the intention in this legislation is not to displace kupuna. It is to reinter kupuna. So what we've been working with Shipti for the past couple months is trying to identify hotspots around the Pai'aina. And don't ever forget that is your kuleana, you're entitled to be consulted. So none of these projects, even should the law pass, should the bill pass into law, they still got to come and consult with you folks on it. And if that's in fact not an accepted practice in your space, that should be law. That should be lava. And we at OHA will respect that. Yeah.
Oh, the iwi kupuna is all buried here.
Mhm.
And when the ocean comes up, they go
Yeah.
back to the sea.
Yeah. And
And that's how it's always been. Nobody over here gonna go and rob them and raid them. Only the ones on properties that are being developed.
so.
That's where our desecration of iwi kupuna and their artifacts are being robbed. They're not being robbed off the ocean.
So again, Anake, for clarification, the language in this legislation is not to provide a space for repository for development. It is to provide a space to reenter our kupuna should they need. Yeah, should they need. Well, if that is in fact the practice of the culture and lineal descendants of this Vahipana, of this Vahimana, of this Aupua, of this Moku, we at OHA will in fact respect that. Well, again, Hikino, and I encourage you and everyone in the community that feel similar to provide testimony. Yeah, and then mahalo, because now we know. As you know, you and I come from the same space. Born and raised by Manalo. Graduating class Kaiaulu High School, no akanti. Yeah, no, you know, like we come aina. And it's the same thing that's happening in Waimanalo. Same thing. Yeah, the kupuna out there from 1964, 1962 been desecrated by the military, been pushed out, washed out. For generations, we've always kupa'a. Yeah, no, our kupuna, there were kanu there over 100, 200, 300 years ago, 800 years ago to be preserved in place to return to Po. The Kaihohonu Kanalo is not the only access to Po. Yeah, when we ho'i our kupuna back into the honua, that is Po. Yeah, and the intention is for them to never see the sun again. And as mo'opuna, our kuleana is to make sure that they're never disturbed. So again, the intention of this legislation and the support from OHA is to create safe spaces that should our kupuna be washed out by natural erosion. Yeah, we don't want them rolling in the surf where people can just pick them up and do what they like. Again, if every community or if any community felt the need or desire to ho'i them and swim them out into the channel and ho'i them back to Kanaloa, that is your guys' entitlement. That's your right as mo'opuna. And we will not get in your way. That's my commitment. So I just wanted to clarify the intention and the language and the legislation. And I apologize if it's not clear enough. You know, and if anybody feels any way, please show up, testify, because that's what we need. We need everybody's mana'o, we need everybody's na'au. So mahalo anake for the question. Mahalo.
Ay. So I think we're at the panina of our halavai. Yeah. Walava. I'm gonna kindly ask if you can please stand as we do our pule ho'oku'u.
And before we ho'oku'a, I just want to ensure that those who have still outstanding burning questions on Zoom or even in person, if you could just write them down and we will accept those and we will take those. And then should we return to ho'imai and should we be invited back to have conversation kūkā, that we will be better prepared to pane.
Okay.
Come back again or whatever.
Yeah, so as time goes on, as things progress, our commitment to you folks this evening is the same commitment that we made to you on November 4th. Yeah, that we will kupa'a with you guys and that we will inform you as we at OHA is informed, and our commitment is to ho'imai and return back should you welcome us. Yeah, and then we are here till things are paupono. That's our commitment from the Office of Hawaiian Affairs.
No laila, I hope everyone heard that OHA as an office of Hawaiian Affairs have committed to see this all the way through till it's paupono, yeah? I just wanna say mahalo nui. Let us pa'a kalima if you can, hoa'o, touch someone's shoulder, let's punny this and do it. Make a polo like, hoi queen, olu hene mai. Hoi. Okay. Okay, e pule kako. Dear Heavenly Father, as we conclude this meeting with our community here at Ha'ena Wainiha in regards to our Kūpuna and to the desires of our hearts to malama them to the utmost that we can in this day and age, we ask thee, Lord, and actually thank you for allowing us to gather this day for Waipa Foundation for providing the venue, for the me'ai prepared by the Halepule, and mahalo nui for just allowing us to conduct ourselves and to share mana'o to uplift one another. And we all know that it is nighttime. So as we hoku ourselves from this vahi to go home, wherever that may be, we ask thee to have thy spirit to be with us, protect us from all harm and evil. And if there be any contention within our hearts and within our minds, anything that is not of thee, we ask thee, Lord, to please help us to manage it and to let us release it. And as we stand together in solidarity for really what we're trying to accomplish is to malama and to aloha ke kahi ke kahi. The words of our ancestors, we want that to be the echo from tonight. And we know that it is through your example and through your Son, our Yesu Cristo, that we can overcome all things. And we will allow every stumbling block to become a stepping stone for us to progress further as a lahui, regardless of what mukupuni we come from or what aina e we come from. Our koko is the same, and we kahe the same. Lord, this is our anoint to you, and we ask for all these things humbly in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Oh, hola.